Hello, friends. Let me know you can hear me. Can you hear me? I'm going to assume you can. Okay, great. I'm going to get started then. Hello, friends. Welcome to Chickenlandia and welcome to a very special live show. It's called Chicken Chat and it's brought to you by yours truly and my friends at My Favorite Chicken. This show is streaming in so many places right now. It's going across all the multiverses, okay? And it's just so exciting. I'm so happy to be reaching new chicken people. That is my goal in life, okay? We are going to be talking about something that is on everyone's mind right now, and that is how the heck you get your flock safely through the winter. I probably get more messages from people all across the country, and beyond during the winter time because it's a more extreme time of the year and we all just really want our chickens to be healthy and happy. So I'm going to start out with some information. I'm just going to give you guys some information I think is going to be very valuable for you. And then I will open up the chat for questions. So if you have some burning questions about taking care of your chickens in winter, or if you have other questions too, write them down. And then after the general discussion, you can post your question in the comments and we'll get to those. Okay. Just a little bit about me before we get into the information. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Dalia Monterroso. I'm a backyard chicken educator, also known as the president of Chickenlandia. I'm probably most well known from my YouTube channel. I know some of you are watching from YouTube right now. My website is welcome-to-chickenlandia.com. And I also have an online Backyard Chickens 101 course. And I just released my first book this year through Story Publishing. It's called Let's All Keep Chickens, the down-to-earth guide to natural practices for healthier birds and a happier world. So that is me in a nutshell. I know you didn't come to learn about me. You came to learn about taking care of your chickens in winter. So let's get right into it. I'm going to take a small sip really quick. For some reason, I decided to have a carbonated drink. That may not have been a good idea. I don't know. All right. So, depending on where you live, you may be past the first bit of advice that I'm going to give already. Like you may already be into the cold days, but in case you haven't gotten into the part of the winter where everything is already frozen and you're in a frozen wasteland, my first suggestion to you would be to go into the winter having already done a deep cleaning of your coop. Okay. In the winter, chickens are cooped up. They are cooped up more. So ammonia buildup can be, it's a major concern in the winter, and your flock can get health issues from ammonia exposure. So we want to mitigate that as much as possible by going into the winter with a clean slate. Okay. So I just wanted to start out by giving you some tips of what you can do before you get into the super cold part of the winter so that you can go into it really strong and with a healthy flock. So take care of that right now, so that you're less likely to face a problem during the winter when it's much harder to do a deep cleaning. Okay. And it might be impossible depending on where you live. Um, you also want to go into a flock, obviously. I mean, go into the winter with a flock that is healthy and hardy as possible. Okay. So make sure right now, just kind of do an inventory of everything that you're doing. Make sure that they're getting good nutrition and good supplementation. So they should be on some kind of calcium supplement. They should be on grit if it's hard for them to get in their natural environment. You might need to put them on grit over the winter because they just don't have access to it, because they don't have access to pasture or access to a run that has small pebbles and coarse sand in it. So take those things into consideration. Make sure they're getting everything they need. Check them now for mites and lice, and handle that before the winter starts if you see any critters on them. Okay. And make sure that they have somewhere to dust bathe. Even during the winter months, it is so important, because external parasites can hibernate. So if they have them right now, you might not have an issue over the winter. Like you might not see any over the winter, but as soon as the spring hits, it's going to be like boom, and they're literally going to come out of the woodwork. Okay. Nobody wants that. So get all of that kind of stuff handled right now. Another thing that can become a major problem in the wintertime when chickens are in a more confined space is boredom. All right. Boredom can lead to compulsive behaviors in chickens that we don't want. Things like bullying and feather picking, egg eating, stuff like that. And though, when chickens are displaying those kinds of behaviors, they are stressed out. So just like humans, when we're stressed, we're more vulnerable to problems. Like we're more vulnerable to disease. Then with chickens, disease can lead to parasite infestation. And then parasite infestation can lead to other things. So we don't want this. It's like this cycle that's hard to get out of. And we don't want to go into the winter like that. So Right now, make sure that your chickens have enough enrichment in their space. If you need to create more covered space for them, do it right now. Okay? If you can, if you still have the opportunity, do it right now. If you need to add some perches, if you need to make some dust baths for them, make a spot, if you need to make a spot where you can hang a cabbage or put a flock block or something, do all that stuff right now because bored chickens get into trouble and we don't want troublemaking chickens. Okay. Let's go into the winter prepared. Okay. So now that we've talked all about that, let's talk a little bit about chicken care during the winter months. Okay. The one thing that I try to remind everybody of, and it's important and it will help to put your mind at ease. In general, chickens will do better in the cold than they do in the heat. So they're actually more likely to be more comfortable and do better in the colder months than they are when it's like really hot. Okay? Of course, this depends on the breed. There's certain breeds that might do better in the summer, but for the kinds of chickens that, for those of you that are watching this show right now, probably the kinds of chickens you have, you generally need to be less worried about them through the winter than through the summer. Okay. Summer can be like really dangerous for chickens if it gets like super hot. So, the main thing that you need to remember regarding the winter is that moisture is actually way more of a problem than the cold temperatures will ever be. Okay. If it's just cold and the moisture is low, you will have way less issues than if you have cold plus moisture. Okay. Moisture is what leads to your chickens suffering frostbite and respiratory issues, which are the two major concerns in the wintertime. Okay. And the way to combat moisture is it really feels kind of counterintuitive, but it's to make sure that you have enough ventilation in your coop to keep that moisture level low as much as you can. Okay. Um, so even though it feels like you really shouldn't just like seal up every nook and cranny, okay, in your chicken coop because even even if it's you just have chickens in your coop, they are going to create moisture just from their breath at night and when they poop at night. Okay, and that moisture can contribute to that ammonia buildup, which would be not a great scenario in the dead of winter. So the best way to control moisture in your coop is to place ventilation up high. You want to place it above the roosts. Okay, that's the most ideal way to do it. Place it above the roost so that there's not drafts where they roost. And it's great if you can get cross ventilation. Okay. You also don't want to keep your waterers in the coop, especially at night, because that will add to the moisture level. And there's no reason to keep water in their coop overnight because they're not drinking overnight. Okay. Um, that being said, speaking of water, one of the most irritating things to deal with in the winter is a frozen waterer. Okay. So if possible, if you can afford it, if you can swing it, and if you have electricity in your Cooper run, you may want to go ahead and purchase a heated chicken waterer, okay? Or a heated dog bowl to keep from having to replenish the water several times a day because it keeps freezing. There is a product that My Favorite Chicken has. I just got one and I really like it. It's a heated plate. I think that's what you would call it, like a heated plate. And you can put your existing water over it to keep your water from freezing. So you don't have to buy like a whole new waterer. You can just put your water on top of it and it will keep your water from freezing. So if My Favorite Chicken can post that in the comments. I think he just did. So you guys say hi to TJ. He is the owner of My Favorite Chicken, and he's in the comments right now. If you get a chance, say hi to him. But he just put a link to that heated water base in the comments, and I'll also put that in the show notes for you. Um, and then what was I gonna say? If you don't have electricity in your coop or in your run, if you just don't have access to that, make sure and dump your waters out at night. And then in the morning, you go and replenish the water. And you need to check the water. If it's below freezing, you need to go out there and make sure to add water, or to add some warm water, and make sure that their waterers aren't getting frozen, because it's very important in the winter for the chickens to have access to fresh water. Okay. That's something that you don't want to let go. So as much as you can, go out there, check, make sure. And I did that for years. Okay. I was like super stubborn, even though it was like at my old property, it would have been so easy to have electricity out there. And eventually I did, like, compared to where I live right now. Eventually I did put electricity out there, but I was like super stubborn about it for whatever reason. I was like, I'm not putting electricity out there. And so I would have to go out several times a day and dump the ice out and put new water in and carry buckets out there. And it's a pain. It's a pain. But now it's so much easier because I do have electricity. So if you can do it, I would recommend doing it. Um, if you are not already doing it, you might want to consider doing the deep litter method in your coop, at least for over the winter time, even if you don't do it any other time of the year. Okay. I know the deep litter method isn't for everyone, and that's fine, but I really like to do it in the winter. I do have a video about that. It's on my YouTube channel. It's very easy to find. You could probably just like search deep litter Chickenlandia. But also there's tons of information about it online. So a quick Google search will help you to figure out how to do it. It will keep your chickens warmer when it's done right, and there won't be a bad smell. There shouldn't be, if you're doing it right, there should not be a smell of ammonia, or any other bad smells coming from it. But the reason why it's great to do it in the winter is because what the deep litter method is, if you don't know about it, it's actually like a composting system inside your coop. Okay. And we know that like composting material generates heat. So if you have the deep litter method going on in your coop, it's going to be warmer in your coop than it is outside. Okay? So, and even if you're not doing deep litter method, if you were to check the temperature inside the coop at night, the chickens, they all kind of huddle together and they generate heat as a unit. Okay? They know that they need to get each other through the winter. Okay? And they're thinking as a flock. So, it's easy to get very worried about them and to be like, "Oh my gosh, they're out there, it's cold." They are wearing a thick down coat, and it's created to keep them warm. And not only that, but they're huddled together and they're creating kind of like they're like little heaters, and together they make like this big heater. So if you were to take the temperature in your coop, it would probably be at least a few degrees higher than it is outside. Sometimes it's like 10 degrees higher in the coop. And this is even without the deep litter method. So I really just want to put people's worries, a little bit more at ease, because it is, people just get very worried about their chickens in winter, but they are wearing down coats. So try and remember that. Now, that being said, if you live in an area, oh wait, I want to cover one thing first. One thing before I talk about that. Because we're going to talk about putting heat in your coop, okay? Because I know that's like the big question. But first, I want to say, if you live in an area where there's harsh winds that hit your chicken run, like we are on a big piece of land and the wind here is just wild, like, and it just goes right through the chicken yard, okay? So if you have a scenario like that, and especially if you're in an area where it gets very cold for extended periods, you might consider also wrapping your chicken run, or at least one side of it, with some heavy plastic to keep the drafts out and to give your flock more usable space. Okay. Just make sure if you do that, just like the coop, you still want them to have adequate ventilation in that area. Okay. So you don't want stagnant air, where your chickens are, even in the winter. You want good airflow, um, especially, but especially at night, you just don't want them to deal with drafts. Okay. But you still want to have that airflow. Okay. I hope that makes sense. A lot of times people get confused about it because they're like, oh, well, you're saying there needs to be airflow, you're saying there needs to be ventilation, but then you're also saying no drafts. You don't want them to have drafts where they're just hanging out. Like, they should be able to just hang out and not have to fight that really cold draft, okay? Especially when they're roosting. So just make sure that there's not a draft where they're roosting, or if you have area, they should be able to go in their coop and be out of drafts. And if you want to create an area in their run where they can be out of drafts, that's a great idea too, or heavy winds. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the main question that I get in winter. Okay. And it's very controversial too. It's a chicken drama. Do I need to add supplemental heat in my coop? All right. If you ask this question in any chicken group, okay, usually just about everyone will tell you no, under no circumstances. You never need to add heat to your coop. Even a lot of educators, no, I'm not trying to hate on them or anything like that, but they will say there's never a reason to add heat to your coop. But I will say that there is actually a little more nuance to this issue than most people in the chicken world will acknowledge, because everyone's situation is different. And there are a lot of different climates in the world. And there's different chickens, and those chickens are in different stages of life. And there are different coops, and coops can be built a certain way or designed a certain way. So while the answer to this question is most often no, like most of the time, you do not need to add supplemental heat to your coop. There are a few exceptions. Okay. If you have healthy adult chickens that are considered relatively cold hardy, okay, they will very, very likely not need supplemental heat. Okay. And if you live in the mild climate, like where I live, it doesn't really, like, there may be a few days out of the year where it gets into the teens or the single digits. But even then, if your chickens are young and healthy and they're, even I have some fancy chickens, and they will really do okay in that. But it depends on a few things. Like if the coop was a different design, it would depend on that. Um, and if I had 5 chickens in the middle of a molt and they're all frizzles, so they're like half naked, like that's a different scenario. Okay. So let's talk about the scenarios where you might consider adding supplemental heat to your coop. Um, if you have chickens that are super young, I'm talking less than 12 weeks old, or super old, okay, you might consider adding supplemental heat to your coop. If you have chickens that are not considered cold hardy and you live in a relatively cold area where it gets pretty cold, you might consider adding supplemental heat. If you have some kind of super fancy frizzled, sizzled, drizzled bantam thing, okay? Then you might consider adding supplemental heat, okay? If you have chickens with special needs or chickens with chronic illness, okay? Very elderly chickens we talked about before, then you might consider adding supplemental heat. And beyond all of that, if you live in an area where you have high humidity in your local environment, like where I am, there is a like a mini climate. I live in like a microclimate. It's wild because I'm literally like 20 minutes from my old house, and it was completely different there. The moisture in the air in winter here is very heavy. It is very difficult to control. Okay. Like I can't control it. So if you live in an area where the humidity is high in the winter and you've tried everything and you keep having frostbite or you keep having respiratory illness, you can consider adding supplemental heat, even if everybody's telling you not to. Like, what your situation is. Okay. And don't feel bad about it. Um, and then, of course, if you have prolonged periods of extreme cold temperatures, I'm talking like below -15, okay? Depending on the construction of your coop and depending on the type of chickens that you have, the breeds that you have, and what stage you're in, you really might consider offering your flock some safe supplemental heat. Okay. And when I say safe supplemental heat, I mean like heaters that are especially made for chicken coops. The best ones, a lot of them, like the radiant ones, like the chicken has to be really close to them in order to get heat from it. So it might be good in like a small chicken coop, but for like bigger coops, you really need something different. Like the sweeter heaters, I think are the best ones. And you put those above where they roost and they just get underneath them. They have to be like directly underneath it and they get the heat from that. Um, but I prefer to tell people if you can, I know it's definitely more expensive. I hate telling people, under no circumstances should you use a heat lamp. Heat lamps do there's no getting around it. Like they present a significant fire risk, compared to a radiant heater. Okay? That's just that's just the truth of the matter. Every year there's coop fires. Farmers have been using them forever. Like they use them for their pigs and they use them for their baby goats and stuff like that. It's not like it's something that is never done. It's definitely done. But you should go into it understanding that you are absorbing a lot of risk. Okay. Much more than you would if you had a heater that's made for that type of environment. If you do use a heat lamp, secure it and then secure it again and then secure it again, like more than you ever think you would need to. Because the last thing you want is for that thing to fall and ignite, as soon as it touches straw or um, shavings or whatever, dry shavings, that there's going to be a fire. So the other thing that you want to do is keep it dusted off because they collect a lot of dust. There's lots of dust in the chicken coop. And if it collects too much, if a heat lamp collects too much dust on it, that can literally ignite. Okay, and I would replace them every winter. Just get a new one if you can. Okay, because they're cheap, they're accessible, they're cheap. Okay, so all right, friends. That was a lot of information. I hope that this helped to put your mind at ease. I know many of you are going to have some questions. I'm about to open up the chat for questions. Before I do, I want to remind all of you, okay, that this live broadcast was brought to you by the folks at My Favorite Chicken. My Favorite Chicken is my favorite online shop. To get my feed, I get my non-GMO or organic, socially responsible scratch and peg feed from My Favorite Chicken. I get my supplies. I was just talking about First Saturday Lime today on my YouTube channel. I posted a video about that. Love that stuff. Also, I get my nesting pads from My Favorite Chicken. Love their nesting pads. I've been using them for a long time. So, and they last like about a month if you make sure that they're not getting poop all over them because sometimes these chickens sleep in the nesting box. Um, and then I get a whole bunch of fun chicken stuff. I've got like a chicken purse and a chicken a little tiny chicken coin purse that I get from My Favorite Chicken. So we're gonna leave that link for you in the comments, and I'll also leave it in the show notes for you. Okay. And I want to let you all know I will be posting the recording of this in my on my podcast. So my podcast is called Bach Talk. My regular podcast is called Bach Talk. And it will be posted on all the major podcast apps if you're looking for it, if you want to listen to it again. So just know that. Angela Reynolds says, I need a chicken purse. Everyone does. Everyone does. Okay, guys, I am going to open up the chat for questions. If you have a question, it would really help me if you posted it in all caps. Okay, that will help these eyes to see these progressive lenses to see your question. Post it in all caps. It doesn't have to be about chickens in winter. It would be great if we could, stay on topic, but we don't have to. I can answer your chicken questions. The chat does go by pretty fast. So if I don't get your question, I'm so sorry, but we are going to try to answer some questions for a little bit. So, yeah, ask away. And I'm going to take a little drink. So I was asking TJ from My Favorite Chicken before I came on. I took a walk. I take a walk every day, and I put on this hat, and it was like too tight. So now I have this line across my forehead. I was like, TJ, can you see the line on my forehead? He's like, I can see it a little bit. Okay, Wildflower Wanderer. Oops, a lot are coming in right now. Okay. Oh gosh. I don't know. So Wildflower Wanderer has stumped me. Uh they asked, how long does coccidiosis live on surfaces if you know? I will say that coccidia is everywhere. Okay? There are many different strains. It is in the dirt. It is really everywhere, okay? Your best line of defense in dealing with it is to give your chickens gradual exposure, okay? And I know that that's another thing that's kind of counterintuitive. We want to protect our baby chicks. We want to keep them inside. We don't want to expose them to the things in the outside, but actually what happens is that we could keep our baby chicks inside for like 8 weeks, and then all of a sudden, we're putting them outside in the chicken yard and they're going to get exposed to everything at the same time. And if you see like a mother hen with baby chicks, she's hatching out the chicks after about 48 hours. They are all going to go at there. She's going to take them all over the chicken yard. They're going to be exposed to all kinds of things. And honestly, like baby chicks raised by a mother hen in a chicken yard are always going to be more hardy than the ones that we raise in a brooder inside. And I'm not telling you not to do that because I've certainly done it. Super fun. You get tame chickens. But if you do that, it's important to give them gradual exposure. Okay. So I would focus more on that than trying to like disinfect everything, especially because it's in the soil and like how you can't, you know, if you attempt to disinfect, like literally disinfect the soil or get rid of it out of the soil, you're going to you will affect the microbiome of the soil, which you don't want, because all of these things in the soil are necessary, okay, for um your local ecosystem. Okay. So what I would do is give your baby chicks gradual exposure to the outside. If it's too cold out, it's best to raise baby chicks in the spring. That's why mother hens do it, because you can take them out, they can have some exposure to the outside. Of course, if the elements are really extreme outside, you can't take the baby chicks outside, but you can, hopefully if the ground isn't completely frozen, get a chunk of dirt and grass or whatever, bring it inside and put that in the brooder, and the baby chicks will play with it and they'll get exposure that way. Okay. I'm not someone that's going to tell you to give them medicated feed. There are some circumstances where you might consider doing that, but that's another thing that comes from factory farming. The chickens are in these conditions where you have to take like this preemptive strike and to keep them from getting a disease, which they could build immunity to. Okay. And I'm not saying that if you do this, you'll never have a chicken that gets coccidiosis. Sometimes chickens just get it. They're more vulnerable to it and they just get it. Okay. But you will be better off giving them gradual exposure. Okay. And just supporting their systems. I hope I answered your question. I know I didn't completely answer it, but I tried. Okay. Koi Lake says, "How often should I put vitamins in the waterers?" That's a good question too. It depends on the vitamin. I would usually do like a 2-week course of it. I'd certainly, if you have your baby chicks on Medicaid, or if you have baby chicks on medicated feed, I would, once they're done with their course of that, keep them on some vitamins for a little while, because what medicated feed does is it's a thiamine blocker. Okay. It blocks thiamine because the coccidia need thiamine in order to reproduce. Okay. So we don't want that. We don't want them to be able to get the thiamine and to reproduce in your chickens' bodies. We want to block that. So, but of course, chickens also need thiamine. It's really important. Really, it's a vitamin B1, very important. So you want to supplement that. When they're molting, you can give them a 2-week course of vitamins. There's some people that keep their chickens on vitamins all the time. If you do that, I would offer some plain fresh water for them as well. I don't think it's really necessary to have them on vitamins all the time. But I mean, I think that's up to you. It depends on your circumstances. But what I like to do is give them a 2-week course. Like certainly when they're molting, in the summer when it's really hot, I'll do electrolytes, vitamins, probiotics. If they're sick, or if you're trying to boost, like let's say you had an illness in the flock that affected more than one member of the flock, I would do a course of vitamins. Follow the instructions. I would say at the least, do it for a couple of weeks, and you could do it for a little bit longer than that. But if you're going to extend, keep them on vitamins, I would also offer them fresh water. Okay. Okay. Sorry, the chat is going fast. Thomas Okay, Thomas, let me know if I'm saying your last name right. Xenos, which is like a really cool last name. Is that how you say it? Thomas Xenos. Thomas has a new podcast called Crazy Chicken People that I've been listening to lately, and it's super fun. And I think he's going to come on Bach Talk and talk to me. So, anyway, Thomas asks, uh, what are some of your favorite cold hardy chicken breeds? I like Bantam Cochins. Little, little. I would say Old English Bantams are very cold hardy, pretty cold hardy. Maybe not like super duper cold, but gosh, they're like wild. And they will roost like up high and stuff, even when it's cold. But I can't guarantee just off the top of my head if they would be cold hardy like in a really cold climate. Wyandottes are great. Actually, Easter eggers are very cold hardy, and they're also very heat hardy. So those are great. Let's see. I put me on the spot here. Fluffy butts. Buff Orpingtons, nice cold hardy birds. Generally, like the smaller the comb, the fluffier the butt, the hardier that chicken will be in cold. And like, we talk about them, we kind of categorize them as heavy breeds and light breeds, even though that's not like an official category. But yeah, like the heavier breeds, the fluffier butts, the feathered feet, like those are going to be usually pretty cold hardy. But yeah, I just like the big fluffy, big fluffy ladies. Wyandottes. I think probably Wyandottes are my favorite, and I love the Bantam Wyandottes too. and they're pretty cold hardy. Thank you for your question. Okay, ML asks, we have an aggressive rooster. Any suggestions, please? Um, there are people that are like rooster whisperers, and they will swear up and down that if you pick a rooster up and carry him backwards or carry him upside down, cuddle him, carry him every single day, that you can kind of work this aggression out of him. Another thing that people will say is if you wait and give them, past that first season, that first mating season when they're really kind of losing it, like their hormones are going nuts, sometimes they will calm down after that. But what I will say to everyone is have a contingency plan, because there's some times when it's just, especially if it's a dangerous situation, like if you have a big rooster and a little kid, and the little kid really wants to be in the chicken yard, that's a dangerous situation, and I know there's like videos of like roosters chasing little kids, and I have met so many grown-ups that are scared of chickens because of those experiences. So I'm always like, that's not funny. Like, that's not funny. You need to not do that. Pick that kid up, or pick the rooster up, or do something. Um, if you handle them a lot, if you give them a lot of treats, that might work. What I would do is walk into the chicken yard with a broom or a rake or something, not to hit them with it. Like, don't do that. I'm not suggesting that, but to kind of direct them. Like, you can kind of move them out of the way and use it as like a barrier between you and the rooster. And even for kids, like can make them feel stronger and more confident in the chicken yard if they have something like that to kind of block the rooster from attacking them. And rooster is like asserting his dominance, and if he can't attack you, he may kind of let some of that go. But like I said, you really should have a plan in case that doesn't work. Because I had my little rooster Philippe for, I don't 6 years or whatever, and he never stopped attacking me until he got really sick. But so I would have that plan, and I hope that he calms down. Okay, if you have one, I assume you do. Joyce E asks, is it okay to deworm during molting? Well, I would say it would be more, if you have an infestation of internal parasites in your flock, that is clearly affecting their health. I would say it would be more of a risk to just let that go, even if they're molting. I wouldn't. This is a personal decision, but I will tell you what the Chickenlandia philosophy is. And what I always say is there's a Chickenlandia way, but it's not the only way. Okay. We are very natural leaning in Chickenlandia. Okay. I do not preemptively deworm my chickens. Um, because like literally if you go into any flock, and if you were to be able, if you had like a x-ray machine and you could see inside every chicken's body into every flock, you would see some parasite presence. It is part of living outside and being among the wild, being in nature. And there even is some belief that the parasites, not at an infestation level, they do serve a purpose at the infestation level, and that's to clear out weak members of a species. Like that's their job. Okay. Of course, we're not trying to have survival of the fittest in many of our chicken yards. That's not what we're trying to do. We don't want that scenario. So, but there is some belief that some parasitic presence, it serves some type of purpose that has to do with immunity and all that stuff, gut health and all that stuff. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I can't really speak to that, but that is out there, that those kinds of ideas are out there in research. What I do when my chickens are molting is I have an herbal dewormer that I will use, because I have my chickens they're in an enclosed run, and when your chickens are on the same land year after year, they're more vulnerable to parasitic infestation. So I do have to have a preventative program, but it's an herbal, it's more natural. It's not just like wipe out everything in their gut. Okay. So you could do something like that. The company I use, I'm not sponsored by them. It's called Molly's Herbals, I think. I will put a link to them if in the show notes. Once I get the podcast out and once the YouTube video is up. So that's what I use. They have like a herbal program that you can use. There's a few different ones on the market. It's actually a great time to do that when they're molting, because when they're molting is when they're most vulnerable for, external parasites and internal parasites. Okay. They're just, they're stressed. Their bodies are stressed. So, but, would I do like a synthetic dewormer when they're molting? I wouldn't. Okay. Because I do think that that could be hard on their bodies. But that's something that you will have to, you'll have to decide. You'll have to make that decision, what level of risk you're willing to absorb, because there's also the risk of parasite infestation. So you'll have to decide that. But, yeah, I hope that answers your question. I'm just, letting you know what I do. I'm not a veterinarian. Okay. I'm letting you know what I do in Chickenlandia. Okay, guys, I can answer one more question. I know there's a lot more questions in the chat. I'm so sorry. But we are about to be for about 45 minutes. So I'll answer two more questions. How's that? What can I do? So Jean, I sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm terrible at that. Kester? What can I do to stimulate my hens to lay again after a prolonged period of molting? You could do a couple weeks of a good chicken vitamin. Make sure that they have really good nutrition, that they've got, you know, you're giving them a variety. Like if you're doing kitchen scraps, some good greens, you can give them some, uh, uh, you can grow some sprouts for them. Just get some really good nutrition into their bodies. I will say that, the rub about this time of year is that they can go from a molt and go right into the shorter days. And for chickens, they need a certain amount of hours of daylight within a 24-hour period in order to complete that cycle so that they will lay an egg. Okay. And right now, we're really going into that time where the days are shorter. So it might not be until after the winter solstice where you start to see more eggs again. Okay. And I hate to, I hate to tell people that, but it is true. Like, you can really go into a period of no eggs for, 2 or 3 months. And it's like, or very few eggs. And it depends on the age of the chickens and the type of chickens you have. If you supplement heat, I mean, not supplement heat, if you supplement light, then you will be able to have eggs over the winter. But in a lot of times they will go from that molt right into the shorter days, and you will not see an egg for a little while. So I like to freeze my eggs, in the spring when I'm really egg rich. I will freeze my eggs. I do have a video about that on my YouTube channel if you want to see how to freeze your chicken eggs and use them when you're out of the eggs. So, hope I answered your question. All right, one more question. Lucy asks, is there a better food or supplement to use for the winter? Um, I would just keep them on their regular feed. You should be if you have laying hens, you should be giving them that feed. Whatever feed for their stage of life is what they need to be on. Um, you can what's good in the winter is if you got those really cold nights, give them a nice snack before they go to bed. Something with fat and carbs. um, will be good for them. So, like mealworms or grubs, you can give them corn, or sometimes you can get a treat that has. And I think my favorite chicken has some treats where it's like bugs and corn. So it's like or some kind of seed or something. So it's like I think like I can't remember what it's called. There was a fun treat that my favorite chicken had, and I can't remember what it's called. It's from Little Farmer, but it has like a few things in it. It's got protein, it's got fat, and it's got carbs. So you can give them that treat at night to kind of get them through those winter hours. I mean, I said at night, but before dusk. Okay, you don't want to leave treats out, especially in the winter, overnight around your chicken yard, because that's just like the rat buffet. Okay. And in the winter, those little animals are more desperate. So we don't want to give them a reason to come around. But that's what I would do. I don't really think it's necessary to change to anything special for them. You could give them, like, I make suet treats for chickens. That's a good treat that they can have when they're molting or when it's really cold. Okay, that's something you wouldn't really want to give them in the summer, but in the winter or when they're molting, that's a great treat. And I have a recipe for that on my YouTube channel. I also have a recipe for like a homemade flock block, and that's a good way to get. It's a I put like garlic and herbs and stuff in it, and really good quality ingredients, so that they get like some good immune boosting stuff along with some fat and some carbs to get them through those winter months. So beyond that, I really don't think there's anything special you need to do. You just need to make sure that they have the good nutrition that they've been having all year. Okay? Before I lose my voice, guys, I'm gonna have to go. I had so much fun today. It was great seeing so many people here. Remember, this podcast was brought to you by My Favorite Chickens. Thank you so much to them for making, I said podcast, this live show. Thank you for making this live show possible. We're gonna try and do this like at least once a month. Sometimes if we're really busy, we end up skipping a month, but we try and do it. So stay tuned. I hope that you can give us a like and subscribe and follow us, and make sure that you check out My Favorite Chicken. And that's it, guys. But the main thing that I want you to remember above everything else, okay, this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you today. All right, you are always welcome in Chickenlandia. All right, thank you.